Right. So everybody, welcome. Thanks for coming. What I wanted to talk about today was just short and sweet to go ahead and talk about how to answer when students ask, what's in it for me? And basically, that's one big question because a lot of times they don't see why what we're presenting matters to them, whether it's for the class or for their life or for anything. So it's always a good question to look at. And so I just wanted to share a little bit, and then I'll have a chance to answer any questions anybody has. Okay, so I'm Jennifer Myka. I am Associate Professor in Biological Sciences at Gateway. So that's where I'm coming from. I included the abstract from the talk for future reference. And basically, the point of the talk is to look at things where it can be difficult to determine if students are engaging with the course materials or if they even find it content relevant in their own lives. Engagement's huge, right? One way to facilitate student engagement is to embed introspection opportunities into assessments. And for example, asking students to apply the principles being taught to activities they do on a regular basis can help them see connections they might otherwise miss. And a lot of times returning to a topic to add connections can help reinforce it. And I'm going to share a few examples on how we might do that in this talk. Okay. All right. So what's in it for me? Kind of the intro piece. And I've in the biological sciences. So what I notice is that most of the non-majors are not really excited about having to take a course that's just from their perspective required to get their degree. So they're not excited about basic biology concepts a lot of times. And it's not that they couldn't be, they just don't usually see why it applies to them. They think that's science people. They don't know what it does for them. So the idea of the embedded introspection is to incorporate opportunities for student engagement through assignments that can help you get there in a different way. So just a different approach of getting at the concepts we want and taking a look at it. And where I'm coming from, at this point, I'm almost up to 760 semester credit hours since I started teaching. I've taught over 30 different biology courses, a few chemistry courses, and most of those also had labs that came with them. So if you count that, that's more. But a lot of different levels, all kinds of different settings, trying to get this across. So that's why I felt like I could share. Okay. All right. So to give you an example of a way that I was able to embed some relevance where it was a quick and easy way to do it in one way by just being a little creative, but I get a lot of bang for the buck on this one and the next one too. So for example, all right, required content, you start there. And one of the things that's always in a biology course is, first of all, we talk about energy. And where we could relate that is to calories. Why are some foods nutrient dense? Why are some calorie dense, right? And then the biological molecules. And the three main ones, fats, carbohydrates, and proteins, are the ones on the nutrition label. They do learn also about the nucleic acids like DNA and RNA, but those aren't going to help you with food. So it can't hit every bit of the topic, but it definitely can be something that we can take a look at. So when I came up with the activity, really what I started with was the idea that I want them to see more about the biological molecules and the energy piece that they learn about in the book and don't think has anything to do with them. They look at them like, oh, there's some weird molecule. I never see that. I don't know what this is for. The energy, when we're talking about cellular energy, they don't relate that to their body in the same way as someone who's kind of used to looking at it does. So this was one way to do it, right? And there's a picture of one of the labels from one of the textbook publishers where it's a nice little setting because it shows the label and it gives you information about it and kind of gives them a way to get started. So like I said, I started with required content. It's in all the books, everything. This is what we need to usually do. And then here we go. So how I made it a little different then was, instead of just the usual thing, which would have been, let's just talk about the biological molecules, talk about energy. You guys tell me back what you know about it. We assess the knowledge, of course, right? instead of doing it that way, I kind of came at it from the side, and I started with asking them to pick two similar food items that they eat anyways. So to pick two things that are related. Examples might be, what if it's a regular product or like one that's labeled organic? Or what if it's a regular versus low fat, or whatever it is? Could be two different kinds of cereal. It really doesn't matter exactly what they choose, but immediately they're picking food they eat. So already we've got a hook in that they may or may not have ever looked at this. Okay. And it's something directly related to their lives because they're eating that food right now. Then I asked them to set up something like this table. And this is an example that's in what they get. And it's basically just walking them through filling out everything from the label directly. So it's nothing really earth-shattering in one aspect of it, but it's basically, go through how much is the serving size, how many servings, what's calories, and then goes through all the biological molecules, because we're looking at the fats. So we have lipids on the cholesterol. We look at carbohydrates, which includes the fiber and the sugars, and we look at protein. And the only other thing on there is sodium, which isn't one of the biological molecules, but this also gives a great discussion point because that's very relevant to a lot of people's health. Well, everybody's health, but that's another good one. So they just start out by looking at it. We compare the nutrients from the labels. I'm like, okay, let's have you answer some questions about it. And so here's where it gets a little bit more interesting in this aspect of it, okay? And that is that when I look at this, okay, these are the questions that they have to answer, and it's obviously a different setting than this, but number one is like, how do these biological molecules you learned about relate to the nutrition labels? And I will have students who did not realize that they were the same thing. It's just that it's out of their realm of experience. I always jokingly say, regular people aren't always talking about molecules at home, so I get it. But I ask them about it, and I ask them to really just look at the label. So that's kind of direct content. Do you see the same thing? Then what I look at is I ask them to check and see the highest percent daily value so that they can see this. And the real piece of it is the relevance. How does that relate to the appropriate place for this food item in your daily diet? And that one is really an interesting one because that might be the first time, and I can tell by the responses, a lot of times it is, the first time that a student actually looked at any of the nutrition labels thinking biological molecules or not, and they are often very surprised by what they find. So they'll come up with whatever the answer is on that. What was the biggest piece? They come up with that, and a lot of times they're surprised. And literally the next open-ended question that is there is, what do you find most surprising or most interesting? And that gives them an open-ended way to look at it. And then now that they've looked at two that are kind of similar, which version do you want to eat? And what's been interesting is that sometimes the answer would be one where I would think from a health perspective, you might pick something with a particular reason. A lot of times they go through and are surprised that the choice they thought might be better for them actually doesn't always turn out to be better, which is a good thing. So that's also helping them consumer science, and they're in the grocery store. Okay. And then I ask them, to take a look at that. Okay. And then the last piece that's content-based is looking at the glycemic index. And so looking at that carbohydrates affect health. So that's where that piece can come in. Okay. So when I'm taking a look at this whole piece, where I wanted to go with that is that this is a way for us to look at something that's already in the content all the time, but they don't see where it relates. And it absolutely is going to relate to the foods they're eating. And I'm asking them some open-ended questions. So when I grade an activity like this, I have to be cognizant of the fact that some of these questions are kind of an opinion question, but that's okay, because these are going to be the kind of things that are getting them to think about it. So really, this assignment is not my end goal of getting at my student learning outcomes. This is a way to get them hooked. So when they're looking at something that they normally wouldn't have been excited about, the engagement is there, and ideally the rest of the content, the rest of that chapter goes better for them. So on this particular assignment, if they answer with, a couple sentences, it specifies, that you actually wrote it out and wrote sentences and whatever, they're going to get the credit for answering what they thought was most surprising or interesting. That's not like I said, the end goal, but it's the way to get the hook in. Okay. related to that, and this one also really follows up and really helps them quite a bit, is I do a food log activity. And the food log is really, I just ask them, and I do this a little later actually in the semester, so they're not right next to each other in the curriculum, kind of push it out a little. And part of my reason for doing that is that it also helps with the repetition and seeing where it might go later. Okay. And what I ask them to do is just sort of do a food log, look at what you eat for 7 days and see what's going on. And when they're done with that, they just submit that. And I just look to see that, they've actually looked at it and completed it. And then on the commenting part, my questions are asking things like, is your diet skewed towards one particular nutrient category? Or do you see any patterns you had not realized prior to keeping the food log? And from students, what I hear are a lot of things like, I had no idea I ate that many carbohydrates, or I didn't know I wasn't eating a lot of different types of food. Or I've even had some say, wow, I don't eat as much as I thought I did, and maybe I need to eat more. Some students are so busy, and we all have these students where some of them are eating 1 meal a day. I don't know if they wanted to be doing that or not, but they comment on it. And it's really an interesting piece to it. And then to get it to kind of go full circle, I ask them about their favorite meal. I said, what's your favorite meal? Whether it was in the food log or not, doesn't matter. But I ask them, is there something you could do simple that might make it a little bit better? So again, it's not really about the food log, but it's about the rest of the information and having it come back and having it be part of their real lives. So it's really, this particular one was a fun one. When I came up with the idea of it was because otherwise they really are never going to see, not never, but a lot of students don't see why biological molecules matter. And it's a big part of the curriculum. So any way we can get them to engage with that and think about it in a different way is going to help, because it will just give them that little bit more boost towards why this could matter to them personally. I said I would share some formative and summative ideas, and I guess my background didn't show up on, it's in the PowerPoint, but not on the screen. But basically, what I look at on the formative side, so where we're just wanting them to start engaging with the material and start thinking about it, I do just grade more for the submission of the required assignment and activity. So there is a level that I specify what I expect from them. So I will say, but I need you to fill out, and I'll specify, like the common thing, you see this a lot in the online courses when we have discussions and things like that, but I'll specifically say, you need to submit 2 to 3 full sentences in response to these prompts. So you make it really clear. And I do include for sure the open-ended questions where I'm asking them to relate whatever it is, whether it was these activities or not, to their personal experiences, something that is in their realm of feeling a piece of, okay? And I go ahead and do that. And like I said, the way you grade that is it's formative. So you want them to do that to get them to like take a look at it. On the summative side, and actually part of this could be formatives too, of course I'm going to have quizzes with content from the book, right? It's going to ask about the biological molecules. One piece that might be formative, but could also be summative depending on how the student uses it actually, is that in more recent times and with the support of going through the Gateway had an active learning institute several years ago. Some of the better practices there was suggesting let them go ahead and take quizzes with unlimited attempts. And I'll just share, because it was a surprise to me originally. Thought that meant everyone would get hundreds on all their quizzes. It doesn't work like that, actually. They put in the effort that they want, but the students who are going to get more out of that will return and redo those quizzes. Some students never do. So if you're worried about whether or not that's a grade inflation type of thing, in my experience, it doesn't work that way. The student who is achieving a certain level on other regular assessments we're used to kind of does about the same with the amount of effort they do on the quizzes. But it gives them a practice there, or again, could just be like a checkpoint. And then on the exam questions, it's regular, just what you would expect. So I get them to think about it. I give them practice so that they see how it works from the book perspective. And then the exam questions are just like we would normally do. Okay. So that's an idea of how we could go ahead and bring in an introspective piece to help get them to engage with material when our underlying goal is to get at the content and our student learning outcomes. So that was just an example. And I feel it can be used in any field. you can pick whatever version of that would work for your content, and you could come up with a way for them to think about it on their own, which we try anyhow, but this just gives one more way to do it. Okay. So I'd like to know now if anyone has any questions. And if you want to put them in the chat, that would work out perfectly. Okay, well, no problem. We were doing the quick TED Talk versions. So again, we looked at a way to try to embed some introspection opportunities, just try to think of ways for the students to work within the content we want, but give them a different perspective. And we know whenever they engage with the material in any way besides just looking at it, they're going to do better with that. And so just gives you an example, and that's just one example I've used in a non-majors class. So thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate it. And if you think of something, feel free to reach out later. Thanks so much. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Maureen. Let me go ahead and undo that. Right, cool.